Story 1. We took the greatest invention of the 20th century and turned it into a money-hungry, corporatized, divided hate arena that has mentally affected the psyche of everyone who has used it. We used to just ride bikes to the woods and find pornography. We should go back to doing that. Story 2. I'm finding myself taking steps to make my life more like it was in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Deleting social media, cutting down screen time, trading streaming services for books, and setting boundaries with people and my job who think being reachable 24/7 means being available 24/7. In its current form, connectivity and the internet of today are not contributing to my well-being. They're siphoning moments of joy away from me, as I see it. I felt that these things were integral to my life at one point, and now I realize they are not. Story 3. The internet is a modern miracle. The web is mostly garbage. Social media is a net negative. I think smartphones are too. We peaked at BlackBerry. Enough to communicate, not enough to feed us nonsense. Story 4. You know when you meet up with your friends now, but you have nothing to talk about because you feel like you have already heard all their news already? Yeah, that never used to be a problem. Story 5. It was better. You actually had to wait for things and anticipate them. It made you enjoy them more when you finally got them. Now you can listen to music and watch an entire season of television on demand and have a new home stereo and television delivered to your door the next day, and everything just feels disposable. I feel like everyone has lost patience as a result. If you meet a new partner and they're not perfect right away, you just trade them in for someone new. No one wants to wait for anything and nothing has any value anymore. Story 6. I feel that social media has only made us less social. It just doesn't work as intended. People tend to argue rather than talk friendly. Communities feel less important now that we have these bubbles for everyone's own peculiar interest available all the time. The need to make compromises doesn't exist, and controversy is nowadays heightened. Story 7. I was born in 1956, and in my opinion, the world changed for the worse with the arrival of so-called social media. The internet is a fantastic invention, but it changed humans into addicts, shortened attention spans, spread toxic disinformation, promoted conspiracy theories, and numerous other side effects. It also is responsible for a lot of good things, but on balance, I would say life was better before 1995 or thereabouts, when it slowly started to take over and colonize the globe, and now the world is increasingly in the grip of megalomaniac billionaire oligarchs. Story 8. Was the floor beneath your refrigerator cleaner before you peeked under it? Social media has given a platform to people who would never have come within 1,000 miles of a mainstream newspaper, radio, or television station. Previously, you had to go looking for ideological lunatics if you wanted to see what they were about. Now all it takes is one viral hot take, and someone can find themselves in the national spotlight overnight. Like the printing press, I think the technology is a net social good, but similar to the printing press, it's going to be very disruptive to our social fabric for a long time. But the rifts were always there, the roaches were always under the fridge. It's just now we have a better look at them. Story 9. I fantasized about having access to the media and information I do now, but I long for some of the simplicity that was lost when everything became available for immediate gratification and without leaving your house. Story 10. There was a brief, shining decade where the internet was an amazing pool of creativity and possibility. Then people figured out how to use it to either get rich or gain power, and it's been downhill ever since. Story 11. Authenticity got sacrificed along the way. People talk about it, sometimes in a militant way, but it's nonsense. Social media runs on fake likes and eBay on a fake rating system that rewards average performance with 5 stars. Micro-social groups against whom there is no discernible prejudice are championed at the expense of others where real suffering exists. People use cosmetic enhancement to edit their physical appearance, but heaven help anyone who does anything but admire the results. At the same time, they tell you it's cool to be overweight or disfigured. Ageism has replaced racism, so wisdom is not passed down. People just wait for their parents to die so they can inherit. Singing voices, even live ones, are auto-tuned and pitch-corrected, and machines generate music much of the time. The human portion of any performance often can't be determined. Yet people still pay large sums to attend these shows and wave their phones at the stage. Cancel culture is a hypocritical abomination. People get canceled for something they said or wrote in passing 20 years ago, while rappers receive adulation for regularly referring to women as derogatory terms in life and in verse. Sure, some things got better, but the loss of authenticity is too high a price to pay. Story 12. I'm not that old, but I was a kid when those Nokia phones became popular. I believe there are two ways to see this. Dealing with people was much better until about 5 or 10 years ago when social media became overwhelming. Having one's whole life and social circles exposed on social media made it too easy for people to be nosy, jealous, and eager for attention. On the other hand, I could not talk to people from the other side of the world, buy things without leaving my house, work reliably from home, have one device that performs the tasks of 3 or 4 separate devices, and have a vast library of knowledge seconds away. Story 13. 44 here. No one has any iota of patience anymore. It's like social media and the internet is a virus that gave everyone attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a bummer. The access everyone has to everyone at all times feels claustrophobic. I used to sit around waiting for friends to call or to answer their phones, or drove around looking for where everyone was hanging out. We had hangout spots and made plans. I don't know, probably old people said the same about us in the 1980s. But yeah, everything feels like a plague of impatience and claustrophobia. Story 14. I think it was better. We had shared experiences in the past, for example, watching the same television shows on Thursday night or hearing the same song on the radio at the same time. Now, with all entertainment available on demand, we no longer have those shared experiences to the degree that we used to. Story 15. Honestly, I have learned so much from the internet. I can find out anything I want to know at any time. I live in a small town, and there was nothing to do but get in trouble or watch the traffic go by back in the 80s. Story 16. It was much better before it got infected with near-universal monetization. Advertisements, engagement algorithms, and companies basing entire business models on dubious quality websites ruined everything. Even social media before that wasn't terrible. I browse the internet much less and feel much less informed now than I did before all of that, around 2006. Story 17. I like how now when I get a random question in my head like, what is Flea's real name? I can just look it up. Michael Peter Balzari. But I hate the constant bombardment of social media, news, and stimuli, and I think it has been detrimental to younger generations. I cringed typing younger generations. I'm in my mid-30s. They're usually terrified to make even work-related phone calls, can't just sit still or in silence, have little self-awareness, and usually no common courtesy for the people around them. Our brains haven't evolved for this level of stimuli. I can't say what problems it's causing, but it can't be good. Story 18. I was born in 1984, grew up through the 1990s. We didn't have an internet-accessible computer in our house until 2001. Before that, the family would watch TV together, NYPD Blue, Law and Order, Star Trek, The Next Generation. My brother and I would play together with Transformers, G.I. Joe, and superheroes. We would collect cards with our grandfather and mother, spending hours at the kitchen table opening the latest Marvel Masterpieces set. Then we got the internet. My mother discovered online gaming and went first in the world for 3 weeks in Unreal Tournament 1999 Low Gravity and Stajib on HeatNet and MPlayer. She met people online and my parents separated. Then came the push for individual PCs. We stopped doing the family thing and would go to our rooms and waste time on our computers alone. Sure, we would game together occasionally, but sitting at the kitchen table after dinner and talking about our days, or with each other, became non-existent. We stopped being as attentive to my grandparents. They would offer their pool to us in the summer. Sorry, not feeling it. I have a Halo race match tonight, my mom would say. As I sit here typing this on my smartphone, it hits me how much having a computer and the internet messed up my family. I'm not saying that it's completely to blame, but I'm sure it didn't help. Too long. Didn't read. I miss the old days when family would do things together. Story 19. I think some things were better. I like the technology. Certainly, it is helpful and makes some tasks faster. I could do without the overwhelming negativity of social media. I think it has created instant gratification monsters out of a lot of people, though. Story 20. I don't know, man, I was like 5 to 8 years old and mostly just playing Easy Bake the computer game. I only got a MySpace and a Facebook because my best friend made them for me. I don't think we should regret Neopets, though. That was a good one. Story 21. As a child of the early 70s, I think it was better. I was an early adopter of the internet. My first computer ran Windows 95, loaded from 10 floppy disks. I learned HTML while recovering from a leg operation and coded a website on GeoCities. It was all great fun at the time, and the internet was cool, but I also noticed I was reading a lot less. I was also feeling restless being stuck in the house. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I have a suspicion that all the extra digital and radio waves might be affecting our minds a bit. We've known for a long time that whales have been affected by the additional noise in the ocean, and birds' navigation can be affected by magnetic interference. We are animals as well, and it must have some effect on us. If I could go back to a time before social media, even before the internet, with no knowledge of it having existed, I would. The best I can do now is move somewhere rural where there is less pollution of the atmosphere. If I were rich, I'd probably build a house with a Faraday cage built into the structure. Story 22. It was way better. There was more communication and community. You were much closer to people, and your world was much smaller and easier to deal with. Modern society has destroyed humanity. That is why we are where we are today. Story 23. This isn't my observation, but the internet used to be where you would go to get away from real life. Today, real life is where you go to get away from the internet. One thing that the internet has in fact changed for the better is that it's now really, really easy to look up anything you want to know very quickly. Want to know what movie that actor was in? Just check Internet Movie Database or Wikipedia. It's so much easier than a paper encyclopedia ever was. Story 24. That's complicated because my personal history was awful. As someone who was abused by both her ex-parents, I can tell you that the internet has been wonderful for people like me. It has helped me share experiences with other people. I was very much isolated when I grew up and realized that what I was going through was not normal. It's helped me find like-minded people I would never have had access to otherwise. It's helped me explore the world, granted, through a screen, in ways completely impossible to imagine in my life before the internet. Nowadays, I see a lot of bad on the internet, of course, but I also see kids on TikTok talking about child abuse, sexual abuse, boundaries, mental health, sexual orientation, relationships, and all kinds of things that help them not be alone with their problems. In the 1980s and 1990s, it was very lonely. I suspect that short of forbidding all internet access, no smartphone, no laptop, no tablet, which in many schools is unthinkable nowadays, most abusive or just toxic parents can't isolate their kids anymore. It's incredibly empowering. Story 25. We were better without it, to be honest. There was some good in the beginning, but it has fallen so much. In the early stages, people just dipped into it. Now people build their whole persona on it and cannot step away. I had a coworker say one of her son's friends was on his phone 13 hours a day. That is just not balanced. You discover your sense of self in solitude, and you do not need to be bothered and reachable at all times. Story 26. I don't know that I'm qualified to say better, but I do think it was slower, in the sense that we could take the time to process our thoughts. Today, people seem to take that as a weakness. Story 27. Way better. We had friends and walked around town. Went for long rides getting lost. Concerts were zero screens. People weren't so scared and riddled with anxiety due to depression from screen time. Weren't so hooked on consuming goods. But I do like having any movie or song at our fingertips now. Easy to pay bills. Easy to go to school. It was easier to get laid too. Story 28. Born in the 70s. It was undoubtedly better before. I love technology and always have. I learned coding as a kid and have been an early and enthusiastic adopter of most technology throughout my life. I abhor how these wonders have been hijacked by the stupidest, most vain, most crude, and greediest instincts of our species. I absolutely blame social media for this. If our species survives the next decades, historians will have a field day with the shameful idiocy and indignity of our times. It should have been a beautiful, positive revolution with a truly unifying tool where we could advance towards a bright, shared future. Instead, We're devolving towards technology fascism, and the planet will burn unless we wage war against what's happening now. Story 29. Born in 1989. Having a cell phone and a separate computer at home was the sweet spot. The smartphone is really the thing that fueled the 24/7 addiction, and it has all been downhill since then. It is not fun anymore. Story 30. Interpersonal skills are basically gone at this point. Few people know how to hold a conversation with anyone who has a contrasting viewpoint to them. Children are massively coddled by parents who refuse to give them an ounce of independence and the ability to make mistakes and maybe learn a life lesson, all in the name of the same fears we were subjected to, yet never came to fruition despite 8-year-olds being unsupervised without having a literal tracking chip in their possession. Communication, in general, has decayed to a point I am not sure it can recover from. Everything is short form and slang. The ability to string together a coherent sentence without any of that seems to be gone in younger generations. Things like loyalty are gone. It's far too easy to replace someone with a temporary solution, only to then turn around and do the same thing a month later. It makes dating feel entirely pointless and most relationships feel hollow. Accountability is not a thing. Everyone can find an reason, in some random TikTok video from someone who has zero credentials to be speaking on what they are discussing. The most alarming, nearly everything you see on social media is fabricated. It's fake. People are not living that lifestyle. People are going massively into debt to try and project success out of hope it will come. Those musicians you see, they do not have it like that. Those influencers, no, they do not live that way. They are merely trying to influence you into something so they can live that way. You are being subjected to a very deceitful pyramid scheme and somehow thinking it is noble enough to allow younger generations to aspire to be that. Old man moment incoming, but when I was a kid, people wanted to be doctors and astronauts. Now they want to be YouTubers and Insta-famous. I do not think the world is lost. I know my words make it sound like that, but there's just a very stark contrast between what was and what is, and I do not in any way think it was for the better, but every generation before me thought the same thing about my generation. A lot of the social constructs we used to govern behavior in generations past are now completely gone. We have to find a new solution to that. Badly.